In our videos, we have offered very little on the land of Chryse. Basically, a slide on a little history, a slide with a map, and we covered armor. That's it. We really have not covered Chryse. Why? This is the ancient land of gold for the Greeks. Well, that's the name of it. But as we've covered before, Josephus equates this Greek land of gold with the biblical Ophir, as they are the same place. And that we have focused very, very heavily. Now, he knew this was in the Far East, but Josephus never went there and never confirmed the Mela Peninsula was Chryse. It's fine that he records it. He says plenty of other things that turn out that vetted throughout history are not necessarily accurate, but it's fine. He's just recording history as best he knows it and sees it. He's a pretty good historian. Now, he speculates with some good knowledge behind him, of course, and there are good things to derive from that. However, accepting his conclusion based on the many directions available as well as maps is simply unwarranted, because he didn't even know what that area of the world truly shaped up to even look like geographically. He nor anyone else back then. So let's not pretend that they did. Let's not pretend that somehow they were able to superimpose a map of the Philippines, the modern Philippines, that whole shape back then. Because that is absolutely ridiculous and just nuts to bring that up. Anyway, the details do not lead there. In all fairness to he, Ptolemy, Pliny, and the others of their era, they're honing in on the location indeed, just as the explorers did on many things, just like Columbus with America. His first go at it, not so great. Certainly didn't get it right? He didn't identify things right. But you know what? It led to more, which led to more, which led to more. Now, we do believe Josephus is right that Chryse is in fact Ophir, the land of gold, however. The reason is that actually fits logic and history. The Phoenicians, or Solomon's navy in part, certainly knew the route of Ophir and its location. They went there every 3 years during Solomon's reign and beyond. The Greeks absorbed that culture into theirs, especially the mariner acumen, and no doubt knew where Ophir was, though they could not get there from the Red Sea port anymore, as the Phoenicians did. No matter, when we use sources for Ophir and Chryse interchangeably, it is because we believe Josephus is right on that point, that they are in fact the same place, as we also believe Argyre, the Greek land of silver, is the biblical Tarshish. We see no evidence that any of these writers being quoted, however, actually went there. And the first-hand accounts come from Barbossa, Magellan, Pinto, Pigafetta, and the like. And those are priceless in value in determining where this is. And yes, we place more weight on the eyewitness accounts, as we should. However, this is a YouTube video, so we are going to stay away from the weeds, okay? The so-called scholarly method of talking in circles just to get right back to the point and proving nothing. We don't play in that paradigm. We crushed that a long time ago, and we ain't going back. We have additional directions to share as well in this video, another map as well from that era, which really nailed down the location of Chryse and affirm the Periplus, as well as the map from Pomponius Mela that we have been using. Our stance is clear, and always has been. Those scholars are not reading these straight, just as many do with the Bible, no surprise. They are doing so with their paradigm goggles on. And they are not seeing what we believe to be evident right under their nose. We will show you, and then you go and test this for yourself. Psalm 72 pulls together all three areas of the land of gold: Ophir, the Isles, Tarshish, and Sheba, including Seba. We've discussed this before. We believe Seba is a territory of Sheba, which is in one of the definitions of the word Saba, which is a derivative of Sheba. Not going to get into the weeds on that, but we do cover that in greater detail. And though some scholars try to assume that has to be Yemen because Yemen was known as the Sabaeans, they may want to actually review Bible geography, which says Ophir and Sheba never lived near Yemen. No way, no how. And this is Sheba, brother of Ophir. Ophir had a brother named Sheba that comes right in the middle of his story. So it's ridiculous to then say that's the Sheba from Ham on another whole side of the world almost. We have covered that in detail. Now there is a Saba, however, that belonged to the Philippines, and depending on whom you ask, still does so solely based on etymology. There is no case for any scholar to make that Saba, Yemen, the Sabaeans, have to be Sheba of the Bible for the Queen of Sheba. They just can't do that because you can't ignore the fact that it's the wrong Sheba in the first place, so it just doesn't work. They migrated from Iran to the Far East. We covered that in detail. We've already done that. Not Yemen. And Isaiah 23 ties Tarshish and the inhabitants of the isle. Isaiah 60 again equates the isles, or Ophir, and the ships of Tarshish. So Ophir, Tarshish, isles. We keep seeing this as a theme throughout Scripture. And there are more, but just getting the table set here. Ophir and Tarshish are isles, as are Chryse and Argyre. Ptolemy appears to be the one who turned it into a peninsula. Not actual history, and certainly not eyewitness accounts, and most especially not from the main eyewitness who actually found Ophir and Chryse, named Magellan. And it was an island, not a peninsula. Now, he rejected the Malay Peninsula, having gone there. So he knew. He was there for the Portuguese. That's where he sailed before. He came back, went to Spain. Spain hired him to go to Ophir and Tarshish, which was his main purpose, you'll see. Who would ever take what an author writes over what Magellan actually did? Not us. Also, we know Ophir and Tarshish are in the same region, according to the Bible, as the ships of Tarshish go to Ophir for gold, while those same ships of Solomon's navy go to a place called Tarshish as well. The isles are in the same area, and you will not see multiple destinations, especially on the very first journey, which identifies both Ophir and Tarshish in different scriptures. So, they're both in the same area. And that is not inconsistent with what's being said in these narratives about Argyre, the land of silver, and Chryse, the land of gold. Again, we already covered abundant scripture, so go back and watch if you have not, especially the isles of the east at the ends of the earth, because there are so many overwhelming, abundant, fascinating scriptures there. Let's turn to the Turan map from the 12th century. In his book, Early Mapping of Southeast Asia, Thomas Suarez describes this map as, of the two islands in the ocean sea, immediately above Adam and Eve, the right-hand one represents the Southeast Asian realms of Argyre, the land of silver, and Chryse, the land of gold, for the Greeks. The Turan map, again, along with the origin sources, pretty much identify Chryse as an island, as well as Argyre, in Southeast Asia. Mentioning Chryse and Argyre of general knowledge is not actually a quote, by the way. But this is saying that they're both in the same place. This is one island, Argyre and Chryse, in this reference, and the others don't position it that way. But still, the point of this reference, it's an island. The Bible says they're islands. Here is a blow-up of Adam and Eve with the serpent, and overhead is the Isle of Chryse and Argyre. What strikes us about this, however, and we think this is a fascinating map, We are building to this in this series. Why would this map identify Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden with that of Chryse, which we know is the biblical Ophir or ancient Havilah? Same place, same resources. Now, the reason the trail leads exactly there, which is why Columbus believed that as well. See, here's the problem with the logical fallacy that we do not enter, at least we try not to. One cannot separate Chryse and Ophir, nor Argyle and Tarshish. These are the same. One's Hebrew, one's Greek. That's really the difference. They're the same place. This map is further evidence of the said connection. How do we know this? Because, as we prove out, the account of the ancient land of gold does not begin in any of these historical writings. It originates in the Bible, as Moses writes and provides directions to Ophir in Genesis 10. Very detailed, specific directions that we test out. But more so, he defines the land of gold on all of earth, which just so happens to end up being called Ophir after the flood, but Havilah before the flood in Genesis 2, which also tests to be Ophir. Again, this mapping is connecting the Garden of Eden with Chryse, and we're not surprised by that, although it is fascinating. These are the same land and cannot be separated, actually. If Magellan did not find Ophir and Tarshish in Malaysia, he did not find Chryse and Argyle there either. And for the Garden of Eden, that is coming up in this series very soon. But again, that will be multiple videos as we prove things out. Not to everyone's pleasure, I'm sure. But building up to, especially with the Rivers from Eden theory, which we've already started loading some videos on that and beginning to unfold some new revelations there, which has been a blast. And man, are they good. They too serve as yet more support for this whole concept. See, these are not separate lands, but one region of gold and silver. Are we going to prove that right now? Not in this video, but over time, we do prove it, and it all tests perfectly. We covered the mindset of the explorers progressing from East Africa, which is not Ophir, to the Far East in their thinking. Can someone find an author who still propagates East Africa? Well, we hear stuff all the time, so sure. And they could even start a blog and put up one reference after the other from different books and scholars that say so. But it would not make it right, would it? We have already proven they have not bothered to even read biblical geography trying to link Africa in this context, in the slightest, especially since they have Shem's descendants in Ham's land to make it work, and that is wrong. And in the wrong part of the world, in the wrong direction, too close, not fitting the resources, nor most of the narrative for that matter. But I guess if one ignores all that, then there's again actual history to support, not claims, but history. And would it not have to be a land of gold and history? Yeah, sure, South Africa is today, but its history is abundantly clear. They weren't mining gold in the days of King Solomon in South Africa. There's nothing. So again, though, Magellan knew Malaysia was not the source of Solomon's gold, which is recorded as Chryse as well as Ophir, and he planned a trip to return to Southeast Asia to the Lucos, or the Philippines, which we proved in the last video is exactly the location, specifically Luzon Island. That's what Pigafetta said, which is right where Columbus said it would be as well, just north of the equator in the Southeast Asian islands. Now, this was Magellan's goal, and he did not fulfill that in Malaysia. He kept going. There's really no debating that. Barbosa provided directions to the Lucos as well, and we already firmly nailed down he was talking about the Philippines in the last video. As this is not a vacuum, Pigafetta identifies it firmly in Luzon. There's no debating that. It is amazing that anyone could see even the words Ilocos or Ilocanos and even wonder what Lucos may refer to really, but again, don't need to even rely on that point as it's recorded in history. So Magellan wrote in Barbosa's book. His copy, by the way, a blogger accused Magellan of falsifying Barbosa's book. Wow. So he had a personal copy and made notes preparing for his journey, just as Columbus did, in fact, with different texts. And that's now redefined as falsifying. Gee, what else do you redefine? Well, a standard for a YouTube video for that matter. But not our problem, because we are moving on. Well, I guess that tells us what universe that guy lives in. Amazing. This is the kind of corrupt thinking that plagues the world right now, and man, is it sad. Barbosa writes in Ophir and Tarshish in place of Lucos or Lucoi, who live in, where? The Philippines. Can't stretch that to any other nation. Sorry, it just can't be done. Ophir and Tarshish are the Philippines, and this makes Chryse the Philippines as well. Don't worry, we will offer more proof for that in a few moments, though we are on video 52, by the way. Okay, and I think we're over 70 videos in Solomon's Gold series as well, and they're much, much longer and more detailed. So yeah, there's a lot of content out there on this topic, a whole lot of evidence across multiple disciplines. Of course, that makes us vulnerable to criticism, as this is YouTube, not a scientific journal. So we have provided sources and have been making them far better recently, which is a wonderful thing, one would think, but comes under criticism. So what? Who cares? We're going to keep doing what we're doing, and we'll continue to better our sources as we can. We are working on a book that should come out fairly soon, and that'll pretty much take care of that. Originally, we used this slide without the full source for the Periplus, though we cited the Periplus, just not its source, in part 2 of this series. We were hearing it was causing confusion, because this slide has 2 sources as it is. Thomas Suarez's book, just to glean something that is actually common knowledge and doesn't require a source even. Talk about a non-issue. So it's simple to say Chryse is the Greek Isle of Gold and Argyre is silver. I don't need a source for that. Can say that comes from all kinds of places. Thus, we remove the confusion, especially since we don't even mention his name in that slide at all. It is merely a setup sentence requiring no source. The second part, as you can see, we split it even from our first use 3 years ago. The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, which we quote a portion and editorialize a portion. The quote is exact for what is in quotes from the University of Washington's copy of the Periplus, never from a book, period, but from that source. Copied and pasted, in fact. That's much easier, by the way. And the context is perfect. No one can say otherwise. When one actually reads the Periplus as it is, and not just authors who seem to be challenged to understand it, it is not that hard. Let's look at the actual text from the University of Washington's copy, and you'll see why we editorialize as we do and accurately. And then, for some powerful new information we have not covered yet on this topic. Below is the actual copy of the Periplus according to University of Washington, not any book. The last part of the inhabited world toward the east. Under the rising sun itself. That is an exact quote. What's in quotes there? No changes, exactly as you see it. In fact, we copied and pasted it because that's far easier, you know. But we then editorialize. Notice, no quotes. Beyond the land of China, essentially. Why do we do this? Is it dishonest to do so? That is stupid. Let's just call it what it is. Because it is beyond the land of China. In fact, this text nails down that it is not only south of China, but also east. They're just not reading. Let's read it right from the Periplus from the University of Washington. After this region, under the very north. Stop there. Under the very north, which you will see is China as we read. This south of China so far. I think everybody would be on board with that. So, it's clearly beyond China. So what we wrote actually fits, but let's be clear. We didn't just say beyond China. We didn't just say south of China. We said east of China. What? Well, how about we just read, because it tells us so if we really look at the text. Again, a little awkward, but really not much so. The sea outside, ending in a land called this, which is China. Now I get it. Again, this is a little awkward, but let's reason it out. Let's break down what this is saying. It's right there and very obvious. What sea is inside the interior of mainland China? None, of course. The sea is east of China, period. And that's not up for debate. This is saying the Isle of Chryse is to the south of China and to the east of China. Don't worry, we have confirmation for this from other sources as well. But it is east of China in the sea. So southeast of China in the sea. What might be there? Just as we said before, it's the Philippines. Otherwise, it makes no sense to mention the sea. It actually comes right out and discounts Malaysia. It's out. It doesn't fit, not even remotely. But when we look at the map, this is easily understood as they did not know the geography of the area back then. I mean, they screw it up royally. They totally omit an entire chunk of Southeast Asia. The whole Malay Peninsula is not there. The whole Indochina is not there. It's missing. It's just gone. You just go from India to China, and there's the coast. That's it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. They were progressing in their thinking, and this is what we've been picking up on. So, we have maps for this that will clarify as well. Our thinking is accurate. But let's finish. There is a very great inland city called Thina, China. Is this now saying the sea is inland China as well? No, of course not. That doesn't change. It is just nailing down that China is the marker here, and China is just a marker, nothing else. Then we head south from China and into the sea or east. You really can't ignore that part. And to do so is really going to mislead, and you are never going to understand this when you do that. Now, also, we finish, because there's a little more here. Of course, we rendered the rest perfectly, but we'll go ahead. From which raw silk and silk yarn and silk cloth are brought. So silk, that's brought. Now we say to India, and it goes on to identify the silk is brought down the Ganges, meaning from China to India. So, again, editorialize to shorten it and make it palatable for a YouTube video. Imagine that. I know. Amazing. Amazingly dishonest. We better stop that. Okay, so this is an accurate conclusion, and we stand by it. Someone may try to interpret this differently, and hey, that's fine. Go ahead. But we see no room for that, really. And this certainly wouldn't make us a liar or a fraud, or dishonest, or any of the words that we've actually been called out there by a particular blogger. Now, this is very clear, especially since we already know the outcome of this project, and that the Philippines is Ophir, not Malaysia. Doesn't fit. Notice this says this also has the best tortoise shell, if you read a little further, and that could fit either land. But let's just prove that, because did the Philippines in fact trade tortoise shells back in that day? Here is evidence tortoise shell was traded from the Philippines at that time. Now for the maps, and another reference that actually lays out solid directions one can follow, and this is very strong. This is Pomponius Mela's map. We brightened it up in Photoshop so it is a little clearer and easier to read than it was previously, but it's the same map. Notice we actually show this as a reconstruction, not an origin as we have. This is from 43 AD originally, but Dr. Conrad Miller reconstructed it and other maps in 1898 and that era. He then published them to restore them in use, and reputably so and credibly so. This map has no less value as a reconstruction, and actually even more since it is well done and published for the academic community to object if there was such objection. This has been vetted and withstood the test of time of well over 100 years at this point. This is a valid map, period. There is no throwing it out because it's a reconstruction. That is nonsense. Now, notice you have India and then China coast right due north, and of course that is not accurate. But in that day, again, they did not have the geography of Southeast Asia down yet. No surprise, and no reason to criticize them for it, frankly. They also didn't know the shape of the Philippines. Uh-oh. Didn't they have a map from 2010 to show? Because that's what someone's doing online. It's saying, oh, this is what the Philippines looks like. That's not what it looked like back then according to maps, so let's get that straight. So again, no surprise. However, our contention all along is they knew that Ophir was in the Philippines. They just kept drawing it wrong, naming it wrong, until finally Magellan found it, and they started to get it right. They certainly did not know the shape of Luzon and Mindanao. That's ludicrous to even bring up such a point. And both islands are about the same shape because Mela did not go there, so he's conceptualizing two islands. Duh. So that's what he did, but he placed them right where they should be. He actually uses China as the reference point, as the Periplus does, not India. India's not the reference point. It's actually China in really truly locating this land of Chryse. These islands are right where they should be, southeast of China. But look at their proximity to China. Talk about obvious. That's not the Malay Peninsula, is it? Even Taiwan is further north. First, Chryse is an island, as it should be, and that is accurate. That is the Philippines, which perfectly fits the Periplus in every description, resource, and category of ancient Ophir and Havilah, the land of Adam and Eve. So what is missing from this map, again, is all of Indochina and Malaysia. That's what's missing. So the Malaysian peninsula is not there. Yes, we are aware that Mela labeled it so in his writing. But that doesn't mean he understood the geography of the area, because he certainly did not just look at the map. That is not rare for that time. They did not go there, and they're guessing, but not that badly. This is actually pretty good and accurate for the day, to Chryse and Argyre at least, as they are not in India, they are not in Malaysia. Another reference point is one passes Taprobane, which is debatable as Sri Lanka. Some say it's Sumatra. We don't care. It doesn't matter. Either you pass it. It's okay because the next island actually further identifies with what appears to be the Sunda Islands. So that would be right by Sumatra. So you're passing Sumatra, turning the corner, and heading to the northeast. What large island is there? Mindanao, as Argyre, labeled on the map, or Tarshish in Hebrew, the land of silver. Skip a stretch, which we believe would be Visayas. We're interpreting this map. We're allowed to do that, and we'll continue to, by the way. And you have Luzon as Chryse, or Ophir, right there. For that day, these are adequate representations of these two islands, and they really don't show Malaysia at all. Now, we did not stop here in our research, as there are other maps from the era we can use and directions aside from the Periplus. But remember, in our videos, first, we really didn't cover Chryse. Just a few slides, that's it. In all of these videos, we've only put really just a few slides into that part. Again, why? Because if you find Ophir, you have found Chryse. Therefore, we didn't put as much manpower into that because we had quite a few tracks and quite a few disciplines on Ophir, and they do lead to the Philippines. Now we spend a whole slide on the Periplus. One whole slide on the map and one whole slide on Chryse, essentially. Maybe we do something else somewhere, but it seems to me that's all we really did with it. So, most of the stuff we have read does not nail it down, nor involve eyewitness accounts like Magellan. We see nothing to overrule Magellan, and we tend to migrate more toward Magellan, Pigafetta, Barbosa, the explorers that were actually there. There's no turning this into the Malay Peninsula, as it is not on this map at all, regardless what Mela thought it might be called, probably because of a confirmation bias, because of Josephus's writing. He did not go there, yet he renders it true to the text. So let's look at another. In 124 AD, Dionysius Perigetes, known as the Tourist, and by the way, he is an African, mind you, not a European. Some people mock all European maps. This guy's African. He writes of directions to Chryse also, and here we have two maps to support. We'll show you one on the next screen. However, what many miss is his perspective from which he is writing here. And that's a pretty huge thing, because you're never going to find it if you're not understanding his perspective. These directions begin in the north, not in India. That doesn't fit. They're just not reading, because it says so twice. Let's read. And when your keel has plowed the deep waters of the Scythian main. Okay, our starting point is where? Scythia. Where is that? Well, many do not realize it is not only the Russian steppes, and you do see that in the map to the right, into the Caucasus, but the Scythians are also known as the Sakai, who lived just north of China. Essentially, I guess Mongolia, just guessing, but looks about that area. So, what you see on the map here, it's marked right there. We'll explain the map in a second and that area. Either way, this is a very northern existence of people. Always were reported so. Some try to place them in India, but that is a migration of some Scythians, but never the Scythian main. And again, we have reconstructions of the mapping of these directions, very credible ones. Their mainlands are up north. Start from the wrong perspective, you'll never get it. Then he reiterates a little later again, leaving the northern climes. Now notice, that's not with a B, as in mountain climbing, but an E, as in climates. So in these directions, you begin in northern climates and you leave the northern climates. How do you do that? By heading south. In time, Not there yet in the directions. I'm skipping ahead to show you those two together. I'll come back to it. But first, let's go back and continue. Your route turns toward the eastern sea and brings you to the Isle of Chryse, situated at the very rising of the sun. Now, this is the same kind of language as the Periplus. So we start in the north in Asia and head east to the sea. And then we head south. So where is it? Southeast of China, ultimately. Read on. But if on leaving northern climates go to the south, you direct your vessels across the sea towards the light of the sun at its fiery rising. So you're heading southeast. You will see the golden island, didn't say peninsula, with its fertile soils. Again, we see he calls Chryse what? An island, not mainland Asia. And it is drawn as an island as well, and not a peninsula. But he narrows this down, just like Mela's map, same thing. He narrows this down from a different direction, see, and his directions do not lead to Malaysia even remotely. It also does not lead to Japan because, think this out, if you're going to leave the northern climates, Japan is a northern climate. There you go. They lead to the South China Sea. What's there? The Philippines. Now, to the right, let's address this map. This is another reconstruction of this almost 2,000-year-old map from 124 AD. Again, Dr. Conrad Miller published this too, and it was vetted credible. He draws Chryse again in the same place as Mela's map does, southeast of China. What's there? The Philippines. Notice Sakai is labeled, and these are Scythians, thus part of what could be called the Scythian Main, because that is a mainstay territory for the Scyths. And the other portion of Scythia is also labeled in the Russian steppes of Europe. Either one could serve, but far more likely it would have to be the Sakai. And there is a large river right there which leads into the China Sea when you head east. You exit into the sea and you head south, and eventually you hit the Philippines in the hotter climate, not the northern climates. All it takes is a full assessment of the full picture in context. We'll deal with Taiwan too in this video. Now, one point we could see being made is, well, you used two reconstructions from the same guy, this Dr. Conrad Miller. So how do you know he wasn't just biased? I mean, what if this is just bias? Well, again, because first, if it were, he would have been called out for it and discredited, more than likely. But good news, for this map, we have another reconstruction, and it shows the same thing. This is from Bunbury, and we even cite a source who records that this map, not just this version of it, but this map generally is only available as a reconstruction from Dionysius the Tourist. This matches the one we just saw from Miller. Notice Chryse is China, very well known, and just to the southeast there is Chryse, an island. Yes, again, India is due south on this map, and Indochina and Malaysia missing from this map completely, which tells you that anybody who was saying it was the Malay Peninsula didn't know the geography of that area and obviously was not referring to Malay, because China is the key to this whole thing. It is the marker, not Malaysia, not even India, really. So does that look like Malaysia to you? As we were hit with, no. That island is positioned about where Luzon should be. The only case one could attempt to argue is Taiwan. But see, that fails very quickly. as the Bible says Ophir and Tarshish are a part of isles, not one sole standalone island. And just test the abundance of gold of the Philippines against that of Taiwan. No contest. Taiwan has no history other than speculation. In fact, we don't even find a real claim from Taiwan, so it doesn't seem like they're even saying that they are, tying it to these ancient lands. So yet the Philippines has a massive and overwhelming amount of all of that, and it fits everything we've tested. So there really is no debate. One last thing. A quick recap. Chryse, or Ophir, and Argyre, or Tarshish, are isles according to Scripture, not a peninsula on mainland Asia, nor any land for that matter. They are isles, or at least an isle in the Turan Map. Isles according to Barbosa, and the Lucos test as the Philippines, whom Magellan labeled Ophir and Tarshish. We tested that in the last video. Also knowing they were isles, Magellan knew too, and not Malaysia. There is nothing in the Periplus that specifies anything on the Ganges from a geographic standpoint but an island in the ocean. And then follow its directions and you end up southeast of China. Again, it specifies island, not peninsula, though some translate peninsula in their books. Mela's map shows an island. So do both of Dionysius the Tourist's maps, the reconstructions that we showed you. And his directions call Chryse an island. Yes, again, reconstructions of a 2,000-year-old map. Very normal and very credible. The Periplus places Chryse southeast of China. Dionysius the Tourist places Chryse southeast of China. From a northern perspective, but nevertheless, same. Their maps draw Chryse approximately where Luzon is located, because again, China is the marker. So you go to China, find it on the map, go southeast, and boom, boom, there they are. Right where they should be. So, Mela's map does the same. So the only question is, why don't we already know this? Why are there so many writings which confuse these very clear directions, which line up with one another, as well as these maps? I mean, it doesn't make sense that it should be so complex. Well, it's not. How can these authors dismiss Magellan, of all people, even those who write about his locating Ophir and Tarshish, and putting it in writing, and then they forget about the whole thing as if it never happened? We call that willing ignorance, blinded by a paradigm in essence. Locating them was the primary goal of Magellan. So why wouldn't that be taken into account? It doesn't seem to be in many writings, not necessarily all, but many. See, we are tired of this kind of circular, so-called scholarly reasoning, which accomplishes really nothing, which no longer proves things in today's world, but goes around in circles chasing its tail. We had someone come in and debate on a science thing not long ago, and they came back and they said, "We're scientists. We don't prove things." Huh? I'm sorry, what? was that, did you really say that? Really? Okay. So one ends up polarized from such journey. And instead, we can learn and progress unhindered by such paradigms. And we shall. And hopefully you will too. It is time to smash through the ceiling and break out of the box and think and test for ourselves, not how an author here or there tells us to think. Even the Bible is to be tested, and believe me, it will pass every one. Because the very same paradigm that claims superiority is the same one who lost, not just an earring, not just a little piece of gold. No. The entire land of gold in all of history. They forgot where it was. Now, that is gross negligence in any other profession. There's an obvious reason why it was lost. It was intended to be lost to the world and kept among a few. But see, we just cut through the crap and get to it. And because we do, we found Ophir, while scholars twiddle their thumbs arguing about what one author pontificated versus another, when many times all three, yes, I mean all three, the two authors and the person also pontificating, they're all wrong. And no one is actually thinking. They're watching a puppet show. The Philippines fits all of the criteria of the narrative of Chryse, just as it fits every narrative of Ophir, because the two are the same. Even the resources, even the tortoise shells that we just covered, even in the last video, the swords that they were selling for $4,500 or so, or whatever value that would be today. Remember one thing though, we are not proving an historical case here. That is not what this is. That is not what we've ever claimed it to be. We are proving a multi-discipline position with strong pose across the board. The reason our foundation remains incredibly strong is because we set it in Scripture, and that is solid rock, where we all should every time. The Philippines is Ophir and Chryse. It is Tarshish and Argyle. Now, take this out and prove all things. Hold fast that which is good. Thank you for watching Solomon's Gold series and our 100 Clues The Philippines is Ophir. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the bell. Share this video with others. Friend us on Facebook at The God Culture _space original. And check out our website at thegodculture.com. Our email is thegodculture@gmail.com. And we are scheduling conferences now for 2020. We just need hosts. Thank you all for your prayers, comments, encouragement, and support in every way, especially those on Patreon who have been faithful. This has made a tremendous difference, especially with conferences, that we've been able to feed people for lunch for free, even sometimes for as many as 1,000 people that we fed for lunch because of what you guys gave. Thank you for that. We have a large conference announcement coming up as well that we're about to make, so look forward to that. Yah bless to